It was supposed to be just another Thanksgiving. The kind where the house smells like turkey, everyone's stuffed with mashed potatoes, and we're all pretending everything's perfect. But that night, it wasn't perfect. It was the question that cut through the air like a knife. Mom tapped her glass, a smile stretching across her face. It was the same smile she wore when she wanted everyone's attention. "Sister's wedding was great," she said, her voice ringing loud, making sure everyone heard. "So, Kat, when's yours?" The room chuckled lightly, like it was some joke, but I didn't laugh. I felt the air shift, and suddenly everyone was looking at me. It wasn't the question that shocked me, it was the way they all just expected an answer. Like it was the next step in some script we'd been reading for years. I set my fork down slowly, my eyes moving from one face to the next, each of them waiting for a response. And I couldn't hold it in any longer. "I already had mine," I said, my voice steady, but my heart racing. 6 months ago. The room went quiet, like someone had flipped a switch, a silence so sharp you could cut through it. And then my dad whispered, "We never got them." So I reached into my bag, not rushing, just calmly pulling out the proof that had been sitting there all along. My phone, the screen glowing in the dim light. And I knew this was the moment everything was about to change. The room stayed silent for a beat. Then my dad, his voice quieter now, asked, "We never got them." Like he really believed it. Maybe he did. But I wasn't looking for excuses anymore. I didn't need to explain. I just opened my phone, slowly, letting everyone around the table see what I already knew. The receipts, the invitations, all delivered, all signed for. And as I swiped through, I realized something. All these years, it was always about Lily. Always. Lily's milestones, Lily's celebrations, every photo, every accomplishment. The family spotlight was hers. And mine? Well, I learned early how to fade into the background, to make room. It wasn't even that I hated her for it. I used to think that's just how families work. One child stands out, the other makes space. But by the time we hit our teenage years, it wasn't just some pattern. It was a structure, a system. My mother, always curating Lily's life like a perfectly staged photo shoot. Dance classes, cheerleading, every ribbon and certificate framed and hung like trophies in a hall of accomplishments. And then there was me. My moments were smaller, quieter, science fair ribbons, a college acceptance letter, achievements that didn't fit into the family's image. And whenever I tried to celebrate, whenever I wanted to share my wins, Mom would smile politely, but then ask if we could take the picture later because she needed good light for Lily's new headshot. And that's when I realized things weren't going to change. Not in that house, not with that family. So I left. It wasn't a rebellion, though. It was a need to breathe. Moving 3 hours away to Seattle wasn't about running away from them. It was about running towards something that felt real. I found a small apartment, just enough room to feel like mine. Big windows, stacks of research notes scattered everywhere, and mornings that smelled like fresh coffee. Ethan's coffee. A quiet life. Away from the noise and expectations, it felt like oxygen. I got a job I cared about. I worked with environmental data, studying water systems, work that mattered to me, even if it didn't impress anyone back home. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And Ethan, he saw me. He listened. He remembered things I didn't even realize were important. No expectations, no comparisons, just presence. Something I never had growing up. His family, they didn't treat me like some background character in their life. They noticed me because they cared, not because I had to perform. And for the first time, I felt like I was enough, just as I was. I thought that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. This time, I wouldn't be overlooked. I thought if I had a wedding, something small, something real, maybe my family would see me. They'd finally choose me. It wasn't about the size of the event. It wasn't about trying to compete with Lily's extravagant celebrations. I just wanted them there. I wanted them to show up, to acknowledge that my life mattered too. So I designed the invitations myself. I made sure everything was perfect, simple, personal. I triple-checked the addresses, the postage, everything. I even sent them with signature required, just in case, because I knew my family had a habit of misplacing things that didn't fit into their perfect narrative. Weeks went by. The wedding came and went. I heard nothing. No phone call, no text, not even a casual congratulations in the family group chat. The silence was suffocating. I told myself, maybe they were busy, maybe they didn't get around to it. But deep down, something colder settled inside me. Something told me they didn't want to see my wedding. They didn't want to see me. The silence stretched on, week after week. I convinced myself it was just a glitch, that they were busy with their own lives. But deep down, I started to wonder, why wasn't anyone acknowledging my wedding? Was I invisible to them? I couldn't shake that feeling. And then, one night, while Ethan and I were doing dishes, I mentioned it casually. Maybe it's a glitch in the system, I said, trying to sound casual. Ethan glanced at me, then asked, Kat, did they ever even open the invitations? And that was it, the question I'd been avoiding. So we decided to check. Ethan helped me navigate through the email logs, something I'd never have figured out on my own. I wasn't prepared for what we'd find. There it was, the tracking log. My wedding invitations, delivered, signed for, every single one, and every single one, deleted. Thanksgiving arrived, and I almost didn't go. I almost let them keep pretending I didn't exist. But pretending had been what got me here in the first place. So I made a choice. I walked through the door, and the weight of everything, every year, every slight, every unspoken truth settled over my shoulders like a familiar coat I never asked for. Lily was already posing for pictures by the fireplace, her husband adjusting her hair like they were filming a holiday commercial. My mom was narrating every detail of Lily's September wedding to anyone who would listen. My dad poured wine mechanically, like he was already tired of the act. Not one person asked how I'd been. Not one person even mentioned the wedding they all missed. I took my seat directly across from Lily. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Silence can be a performance, and she was always the best at playing her part. Dinner started with the usual script. Praise for Lily's dress, her venue, her guest list, her connections. Every sentence a reminder that they'd shown up for her, without hesitation, time and time again. And then, Mom tapped her glass again. Sister's wedding was great, she said brightly, glancing over at Lily as if to confirm. So, Kat, when's yours? The room chuckled again. My dad's carving knife paused mid-cut. Lily didn't move. Her eyes stayed glued to her plate. Too still, too careful. And in that moment, I knew everything. For years, I would have laughed it off, let the jab slide under my skin, pretended it didn't hurt. But not this time. Not after everything they'd buried. So I set my fork down gently, looked around, and said, I already had mine. My voice was steady, calm. 6 months ago. The silence fell like a heavy weight. Eyes widened. Forks froze midair. I waited, letting it sink in. Then, quietly, I added, you got invitations. The silence stretched on. My dad looked at me, his eyes blinking like he didn't quite understand what he'd heard. We never got them, he whispered, the familiar deflection coming out before he could even process the words. We never got the invitations. I could feel the familiar weight of disappointment pressing on my chest, but this time, something inside me shifted. I didn't feel angry, I didn't need to yell, I didn't need to fight. What I felt was clarity, and that clarity pushed me to do something I had never done before. I didn't break eye contact, I didn't hesitate. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I didn't rush, no drama, no grand gestures, just the quiet determination of someone who was finally ready to stop pretending. I placed it on the table, and the screen lit up in the dim light. Every eye in the room turned to it, and as I swiped, I saw the truth unfolding. The receipts, the confirmations, the tracking logs, all the invitations, signed for, delivered, and deleted. I tapped on the first one and turned my phone toward them. The signature was unmistakable, Lily's. Mom gasped softly. Dad leaned forward, squinting at the screen, like maybe, just maybe, the truth wouldn't be there. But it was, clear as day. These were delivered April 23rd, I said quietly, pointing to the tracking number. All 4 invitations signed for by Lily. I let the words sink in, the truth settling over the table like a heavy fog. I paused for a moment before adding, and you didn't get them? Or you just didn't want to? My mother's eyes were wide, like she couldn't believe what was happening. No, no, this doesn't make sense, she said, shaking her head in disbelief. Lily wouldn't do that. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I wasn't going to let them pretend. Not this time. Why? I asked, my voice steady. Why would Lily hide my wedding? Why would she sabotage it? Lily opened her mouth, but there was nothing she could say. She had no excuse, no answer that could cover the truth. And then, finally, she cracked. This is insane, she snapped, her voice defensive. You're always twisting everything to make me look bad. But I wasn't twisting anything. I was showing them exactly what had happened. I turned to face her. No, Lily, you did that yourself. You chose to make sure no one saw my wedding. There was a long pause. The silence that followed wasn't the same as before. It wasn't just uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that settles over everything, a truth that no one could deny anymore. My father, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke. Lily, did you sign for these? His voice was low, but there was no mistaking the pain in it. He knew what it meant. Lily didn't answer right away. She fumbled for words, but nothing came out. Her face twisted, trying to hold on to the lie, trying to hold on to control. But it was already slipping away. I don't remember, she stammered. Maybe I grabbed the mail, but I didn't see any invitations. She looked at me, eyes darting around the room, trying to find someone to back her up. But I didn't need anyone to back me up anymore. The truth was on the table, and they couldn't undo it. Then why does it show up on your device? I asked quietly, pulling up the email log. I showed them the timestamp, the one where the invitation was opened and immediately deleted. You didn't forget, Lily. You intercepted them. Her face went pale. I could see it all happening in front of me. The weight of years of lies, of pretending things weren't what they were. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going to play along. The room shifted. Everyone felt it. Lily's husband, Ryan, was the first to break the silence. He looked at Lily and then at my father, his eyes full of confusion. Lily, is this true? He asked, his voice low, but the question was enough to shatter the last of the facade. Lily didn't even look at him. She stared at the table, her shoulders slumped, like the last bit of control had slipped from her. I don't know, she whispered, but we all knew. My father, his voice barely above a whisper, asked, who has access to the family email account? The question hung in the air, and we all knew the answer. We'd always known. Lily swallowed hard. I didn't delete anything, she said quickly, but it was too late. We had the proof. The truth was out, and I wasn't done. I turned back to them, my voice calm but firm. You keep asking what Lily wouldn't do, but the question is, why do you always excuse it? Why do you always look the other way? My mother's face twisted in defense. We did our best, she said, but I didn't want their excuses anymore. Not today, not ever again. I looked at her, finally allowing myself to speak the words I'd buried for so long. No, Mom, you did your best for Lily, but for me, you did the bare minimum and called it fairness. And with that, I saw it, the shift. The truth landed, and it wasn't just a blow to Lily, it was a blow to the entire family. The silence stretched, and for the first time, it felt like my words had weight. I turned away from the table, walking toward the door. I didn't say anything else. There was nothing left to say. This was the moment I was finally taking control of my own story. But before I left, I looked back once. Just once. I didn't lose my family tonight, I said, my voice steady and clear. I just stopped pretending I had one. And with that, I stepped out, letting the door close softly behind me. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was final. And for the first time in my life, the silence that followed belonged to me. If this story felt familiar, share your thoughts below and make sure to subscribe for more.